All right, YouTube, it's time for some debate analysis. I'm going to, for anyone that gets on here early, I'm going to do a little bit of fiddling around. I am on video right now. We'll see if I keep the camera on. It depends on my connection. And also, I've got to obviously mute the feed there. I actually took notes here, which is something that I don't normally do. I figured there'd be a lot of specific moments, really. And I'm not paying, for those of you who are joining, I see it's like 56 people there already. I'm not going to be paying attention to chat at first. I've got to do analysis first. So hold up here. I'm going to see if I can actually shrink this down. That actually works better. So here I'm going to be analyzing, for those of you who are joining, which is quite a few people already. I'm going to be analyzing a little bit about the debate, just doing some general banter. My first thoughts: Trump was Trump, which I think we all expected. He didn't hold back. He, however, largely was not being antagonized. It appeared that he wanted to go on the attack. I don't know if that was the wisest decision that he could have made, but it served him well in a couple of ways. What Trump has realized, I've said this all along, is that this is the social media debate in the social media election. He needs to drive interest ahead by making things that can fit in a 5-10 second soundbite and which sound real good. That being said, and I've got notes here. Normally I don't take them, I don't use them, but I had to have these open here just so that I could go through them really and sort of analyze. Both of them got some good hits in, by the way, admittedly. I think the line of the night is Hillary has experience, but it's bad experience. You heard the crowd cheering twice, actually, for this. Now, Hillary, if you paid attention to her reaction, she knew she had just gotten a fairly brutal hit. Just as Trump, if you gauged his reaction at times, he knew that Hillary had scored a point against him. But I think this one's probably worth 5 or 6 points on its own. That, I think, is going to be sort of the viral meme of the night as far as the debate goes. For those of you who have just joined, I'm not paying attention to chat quite yet. I'll be talking to people in chat, 10, 20 minutes maybe, or we'll see exactly what happens. I don't want to stream for more than an hour-ish because then it'll just be superfluous. But I'm going to go through these. The debate was broken down, of course, into 3 sections. Roughly on different sort of partition topics. Race got a big chunk of the time, as well as essentially foreign relations in a general sense, as they dealt specifically with ISIS. And that was, I think, predictable as well. I think it was predictable that ISIS would come up not once, not twice, but really occupy about 20 minutes of time all told. It was fairly easy to tell that that was going to happen. The first hit of the night was actually Clinton speaking against Trump, and that had to do with trumped-up trickle-down. Now, I'm sure that Clinton's partisan fans are going to hashtag this and throw it around Twitter. They probably already are. I'm not on Twitter right now. I was trying to be on 4chan, but it turned into a shitstorm of obvious shilling on both sides, so I just said, okay, at this point, about 20 minutes into the debate, it was obvious that it wasn't worth paying attention to because it was just all being shilled up. I don't think, though, that trumped-up trickle-down is going to work with the independent voters watching. You've got to realize, a segment of the population, about half the people that'll vote, have already made up their minds. Neither Trump nor Clinton, nothing that they say or do really is going to change their minds because Hillary Clinton's core of support thinks Trump's an orange Hitler. Trump's core of support thinks that Hillary Clinton is a desperately corrupt old woman with severe health problems that will probably leave President Tim Kaine. They're not going to change their minds based on the debate, but independent voters will. Now, I looked at the analysis. Several people posted this on 4chan before I sort of switched it off, sort of closed out the tab. Among independents, Trump was scoring much more bigly, you could say. And that's an interesting aside there with one of the things that he said. And he did it on purpose, I can assure you of that. I think Trump scored bigly with independents tonight. Those that are more Trump fans, they wanted him to be bombastic. If that's what they wanted, they liked his performance. If they wanted him to even out more and not go on the attack, they probably were let down. That being said, overall, my overall assumption about the ultimate final result is, as I predicted. Trump had a slight, measurable but slight advantage throughout the debate from the perspective of meme-worthy sound bites. As far as substance went, neither of them spoke about it. Did either of these candidates offer any real specific suggestions about how they were going to create jobs? No. Trump said, we're going to bring back businesses. How? Well, we're going to bring the businesses back. We'll tax them. Clinton said, oh, we're going to grow things in this country through this tax code and that tax code. She never explains how it's going to work, because a debate is not about minutia. Nobody fucking cares about minutia. What they want is something that they can post on their Facebook wall. And both of them appear to realize this. Trump, I think, realized this early on. That's why he became the nominee. Otherwise, he never would have had a chance. Clinton very lately has come to realize this. The problem being her organic apparatus to spread these things is smaller. That's where the Trump advantage comes in. As far as performance goes, they were about evenly matched. Ultimately, though, I think even some of the left-wing media will arguably say, I really believe this, that Trump performed better than expected. Oh, yeah, well, he was stumbling all over his words and blah, 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 and he lied constantly. But, you know, he didn't fall down. He didn't say X, Y, and Z. And they'll have to, they put expectations, I guess, on him so low that it's almost impossible for them to now spin their own story, even though the advantage that he has nothing to do with substance. On substance, neither of them can gain an advantage. They're not going to talk substance at the debate or a rally or anything else, because substance does not matter to people that tune into the presidential debate and are still undecided. If substance mattered, they wouldn't be undecided voters. They probably would be non-voters right now. Let's keep that in mind. We'll go through, I'm going to go through. For the first section, I've got, I think, 8 or 9 points here where they sparred with one another. It was a very attack-driven debate. It wasn't like the kind of boring debates you got between Obama and Romney where 90% of the time it was humdrum. They were trying to talk about actual substance to their plans. It didn't work out so well. And the only real hits that were scored by either Obama or Romney, or Obama and McCain, or anybody else who paired up, Kerry and Bush, Bush and Gore, was a handful of sound bites that could be created in the pre-information age, really, in some of these elections, where it didn't even matter as much. Only the news would be covering it. Now you've got the internet. The second quote was here. Trump pointed out Clinton's been there in office, essentially, or in a capacity that's within politics. Of course, some of that was as the first lady for 30 years. So why hasn't she done anything about, and he talked about the economy, job creation, jobs going overseas, later talked about ISIS as well on this topic. That was a good jab for Trump. That was probably number 2 behind sort of the quote of the night regarding she's got experience, but it's bad experience. That was an effective one. You could tell by Clinton's reaction. Again, if you read her eyes, which were kind of all over the place, true. If you read her eyes, then you saw that got under her skin a little bit. Now, she did manage to get under his skin too. But when he responded to her in those moments, he actually took it more easy than when he had just gotten a question from the moderator and he was just going for the jugular. I think Trump wanted to knock her out in a single debate. Now, I don't think he quite did that. I think he did well enough so that the polls will remain about even for right now. He might pull a little further ahead. If the independent voters really did like this as much as analysis suggests, you know, they've got those little colored lines that show people's responses during the debates. If that turns out to be true, and if the internet polling is not fuckery because of people using botnets or something like that, I think we can expect Colorado and New Hampshire probably are going to move into Trump's fold. I think it may certainly help him in New Mexico as well, because, of course, they've got the border issue. Trump appears stronger on that to people that feel strongly about the issue specifically. But in my third point here, this is the note that I wrote. Meaningless drivel about estimated jobs created via economic plans. Neither Hillary Clinton nor Donald Trump has any idea whatsoever how many jobs would be created by their economic plans. That is a certainty. There is no possibility. There is no person under the sun who can say specifically, oh, 100,000 jobs are created by this recension of some tax or some regulation. It's just, you can't do it. That's not the way politics even works. It's very generalistic. The specific minutia, the real problem, this is why it would be problematic if they had someone trying to live fact check this. let alone the fact that things would have gone even more heavily over time. Then they wouldn't have gotten to half a dozen extra questions. They already missed a few on the end anyway. The other problem with that, there's no way to fact check these things. You don't know anything about their job creation plans. I can say yes, if you were to tax foreign goods from former U.S. firms, yeah, it probably would prevent more jobs from leaving, but would it actually bring any of them back? Trump doesn't know. He's assuming. His fans are assuming. It may be a good assumption, a reasonable assumption, but you don't know. Hillary Clinton has no idea that staying the course for 4 years is going to create 3 million jobs or whatever insane total she mentioned. And if it did, it'd barely be keeping up with population. She's talking about, yeah, we're going to continue at 1% growth. How great is that? We'll be, 6 points behind China. I guess to her, that boring status quo is great because to her, the status quo is great. She's a multimillionaire. She doesn't care about these things. Then Trump pointed out that Hillary Clinton had called the TPP the gold standard, went after her on NAFTA. This was also effective. The TPP isn't even well liked by Democrats, but Hillary Clinton missed an opportunity here. She could have said, talked about NAFTA, and instead of almost praising it, she could have said, well, in retrospect, it was a bad idea. It would have been better to admit fault there than to stay the course and say, oh, it was for NAFTA and it created jobs. Everyone knows that's a lie. She also missed an opportunity. Trump missed an opportunity, though, because he didn't press further with the TPP. He should have pointed out that her book said quite clearly in its older edition anyway, yeah, Miss Clinton's for the Trans-Pacific Partnership until early 2016 when she had that edited to say, oh, well, she's undecided on it, and they edited some passages out. If he had pointed that out, it would have been a much, much more effective hit. Missed opportunity. And this is really what I was afraid of as far as Trump goes. He tends to miss opportunities for some of the really juicy hits. He still does well. He still gets hits in, but he doesn't carry through with the punch. It's a jab. Instead, when he could have given just a total roundhouse, knocked her jaw right off. And he didn't do that on the TPP. As I will say later, though, he did get a couple really good, impressive hits in, which is another reason he kind of has an advantage, as opposed to Hillary. Hers were more substance-related, or Trump is lying, Trump is, Trump Foundation or Trump bankruptcies or something. It's the same stuff we've already heard. I would point out, secondly, here, most of what we heard tonight, if you've paid attention to any of their rallies, about 90% of that really is stuff that they've just said before anyway. Trump has a more rambling coherency about him. This turns some people off, but it also allows him to very quickly roll through things and score more hits. Clinton is more measured. She's more cautious. That prevents her from scoring more points, but it also prevents her from making quite so many verbal gaffes. Although I believe there was one fairly major verbal gaffe there, and I'll get to that as well. Another big win for Trump in the first segment. I don't think Douglas MacArthur would like that with regards to Clinton putting out her ISIS plans on her website. There are people, independent voters, who will respond to this, who do think that it's probably a bad idea for Clinton to be saying, oh, here's how we're going to handle this group of combatants that we want to wipe off the face of the earth. It does show, I think, a naivete on Clinton's part. She's a Secretary of State, First Lady, Senator. She should know better, really. Trump, I do believe, is doing the right thing by not revealing that. The problem for Trump is that many of the average voters will view that the same way they do his tax returns. They can't wrap their heads around why those wouldn't be released. They can't wrap their heads around, well, why is Trump not telling us specifically how he's going to defeat ISIS? That being said, Clinton's not talking about specifics either. It's still the same old political generalizations. Trump hit her on this over and over again. And although individually those hits maybe weren't quite so effective as some of the better sound bites, combined they were pretty good. It was like rapidly punching someone. Yeah, you're not maybe doing so much damage with each punch, but at the same time, you're punching them repeatedly. It could be worse. He also said, why not? This was his funniest moment of the night, other than talking about his temperament. Oh, trust me, I'll get into that. That was a funny one. Was answering why not when Hillary pointed out that maybe she would be blamed for everything else under the sun. Because in the mind of a lot of undecided voters, you got to realize most undecided voters, I have a feeling, lean towards Trump anyway. Because if they were going based on who's the more mature or moderate or whatever mainstream candidate, if they thought things were going well, they'd already be Clinton fans. They'd already be Clinton fans if they thought those things. So they're leaning towards them anyway. Maybe they'll respond, and I think there's a pretty good argument to be made for them responding to Trump simply browbeating her on being a politician in general. And then he goes on to do this 5 or 6 different times just in the first segment. He gets into it several times in the second, finally forgets about it when it's actually crunch time. I was surprised, by the way, there were no closing statements. I wonder why. Usually they have them. I guess it's because they ran over, so they decided not to have them. Also, another thing, this isn't a win for either of them. The Trump tax returns and Clinton emails thing towards the end of the first segment. I will release my tax returns when Clinton releases her 33,000 deleted emails. Old issue, doesn't help with independent voters, doesn't hurt with them, but also doesn't help with them because they're seen as about equal on this issue. They're both withholding something. Now, my own personal feeling is what Clinton did and what Trump is doing with his tax returns are not the same thing. I don't give a fuck whether Trump is worth 500 million or 2 billion or 10 billion. It doesn't affect my personal life. What Clinton did potentially did affect my personal life insofar as national security is concerned. They are not easily reconciled issues, but in the mind of the average independent voter, nobody gives a fuck. So that's the end of the first segment. I'm going to scroll down here. Again, for those who didn't hear it before, I'm not looking at chat right now, specifically because it'll interrupt my train of thought. I'm trained more to rant for long periods of time. I wish I was up on that debate stage against Hillary Clinton, and I'm sure that there are probably some of you who wish that that was the same thing. She'd be mincemeat. Number 2, the biggest gaffe of the night goes to Hillary Clinton for saying the gun epidemic. You may not have even noticed this, but I did. The gun epidemic as opposed to the gun crime epidemic. Now, first, it's factually incorrect. There is no gun crime epidemic, even in the inner cities in the United States. Gun crime is actually at a 45-year low. I used to say 40-year low. It dropped even further. Now it's stabilized, but it's still at a monumentally low rate compared to the 80s or the 90s. So it's factually inaccurate. Number 2, anyone from the NRA here, you probably heard that. You probably did notice it. You probably definitely hate Clinton now. And not all NRA members are rock-ribbed Republicans. For them, that's going to be a little bit of an issue, or at least I predict that it will be. Clinton also, I think, now I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure how independents feel about this, and it really depends on race. Most of the second segment devolved into, she's racist, he's racist. Again, predictable. Speaking about implicit bias, that is the idea, she didn't use these exact words, but everyone knows what she meant. Whites are implicitly biased. They implicitly cross the street when a black person approaches and so forth. I'm not sure that it's the greatest idea for Clinton to play up to a handful of younger voters that haven't jumped ship to a third party, plus the black and Hispanic voters that she's already doing well with, although not as well as her predecessor was doing with them, Obama, of course, as opposed to Romney or McCain. I'm not so sure it was a good idea to pander to 10% of the population while potentially alienating, 45, 50% of the population. But we'll see what happens. I don't think it'll play that big a role. I think the race debate, honestly, got glossed over a lot. This was something they could have exploited for a lot more chat on both sides. Clinton and Trump could have both scored many more points with this. They chose not to. I think it's such a touchy issue for Trump and for Clinton. And Trump pointed out, Clinton saying in the past, of course, black youth, like gang members, they're super predators. So she didn't want to stay on the issue of race. She was going to get hammered by him. And Trump didn't want to dwell on it also. Now, another Trump flub, and this was another time when he could have scored so many points that he'd be soaring, and he didn't do it. It honestly frustrated me a little bit as somebody who backed him. I don't think he did badly. I think he did just fine. But this was something he could have scored so many more points on, in my estimation. The Mar-a-Lago. When Clinton brought up him being sued for discriminatory housing practices, he is correct when he said, it was settled out of court with no admission of guilt. He's right. It was. There's never any finding of criminal wrongdoing on Trump's behalf. And it was, at the same time, involving hundreds of other businesses. Now, he made that point clear, and he did that just fine. He deflected the attack. He did fine at that, but he could have turned around and really drawn Hillary Clinton in further and really given her enough rope to hang herself on the issue. He was about to talk about the Mar-a-Lago and what I said some time ago, which is that when he sort of got this property, it was in an area where discrimination and, in fact, segregation in country clubs was the norm. He chose to desegregate the Mar-a-Lago and let Jews and blacks in, which is something no other club did at the time. But because he was so incoherent and rambling so much, he didn't actually make that point plain enough. For the average viewer who's not already versed in sort of what he was doing there at the Mar-a-Lago, they have no clue. They're none the wiser that Trump was actually desegregating a country club in an area where he was the only one doing so because all he cared about was admission fees and didn't give a fuck if he had to eat next to a black man. He could have scored some major points here. He didn't do it. It was frustrating. I don't think he lost anything on the back and forth with Clinton here, but he could have made so many more gains if only he didn't have such a stream of consciousness manner of thinking. Now, yeah, that's a sign that he's, high functioning, really intelligent, smart as a whip, but he's got to tone that energy down just a little bit. Otherwise, he can't get the point across. That's probably his biggest flaw in this debate, in his rallies and everywhere else. If he were a little bit more coherent, he'd be even further ahead than he is, honestly. It's his biggest fault. As far as demeanor goes, of course, that could be said to be one of his faults too. Temperament specifically. Again, we'll get into that. That was a funny one. He deflected on the birth certificate issue, and he was right to do so. Clinton also deflected on it, and she was right to do so. It was clear that they wanted to target Trump with this. He knew that it was going to come up. I think he kind of flubbed it with the Mar-a-Lago bit on the racial issue in general. That being said, everybody in the country already knows that Trump was a birther for a time. Everybody already knows that. And yet he's tied with Clinton. Is this going to change anybody's mind? Honestly, does anybody care that Donald Trump questioned Obama's birth certificate? No. And he got to make the point, hey, until I came along, nobody had raised the issue strongly enough for him to actually be bothered releasing it. And he takes credit for that. I'm not sure that that's completely accurate. It seems a little bit politicized to me on the issue. But he can make the claim, and it's going to jive with some people. That being said, the issue has already been put to rest, though. It's a years-old issue. It's boring. People are much more concerned about ISIS or immigration, stuff like that. They don't really care about the birther issue for the most part. If they did, they wouldn't be voting for either of these people because Trump was a birther. That is true. He hasn't even denied it. And Hillary Clinton's campaign for a while did run with the birther thing. It was her campaign in general, taking off from certain groups of Clinton fans that did exploit it for political gain. That is true. The fact checkers can claim it's not, but it's true. You can see clips of this from years ago where the issue is brought up in the sense of Trump saying it at the time, of course. That's the way they're framing it years ago on this issue. But it is also admitted openly by the same sort of media groups that are backing Clinton now. Yeah, indeed, her campaign partially latched onto it. She may not have done so specifically, but her campaign manager and some of her lower staffers did. They did circulate a picture of Obama in a robe bowing before the cleric. That's the picture that Trump alluded to. Again, if he was just a little more specific, he could have scored points with that too. On the race issue, he chose not to do so. His loss, not a huge loss, but a loss nonetheless, honestly. Now we'll go to the next segment. I think probably something, I don't know if everyone caught this or not, but Clinton has doubled down on threatening war with Russia over cyber intrusions. Trump half-heartedly pointed this out and again didn't hit hard enough. He jabbed her on this. She deflected, of course. Clinton is off the rails if she thinks that a physical military response, even the threat of a physical military response, is an acceptable use of force engaged in a cyber war. Now, the proper response is engage in cyber war. Better defenses, take out their computers. What the fuck are they going to do about it? Nuke us? Apparently, Clinton thinks that's a possibility because she appears ready to press the little red button if somebody hacks into her email again. It is a problem. This is pro-war Hillary Clinton, and this was the only pro-war thing said during the entire debate. Well, you remember in 2012 when it was Romney versus Obama, of course. You probably remember that. They were debating, essentially debating over, hey, how many people are we going to kill? What should we do with all these drones? This didn't even really come up. The only time that war was actually cast in a positive light in the whole debate, other than them disagreeing on whether Trump supported the Iraq War, another point that he didn't drive home fully, I'll get into that, was Hillary apparently saying, yeah, oh, fuck the Russians, I'll just nuke them off the face of the earth or something like that. They both, by the way, agreed on not initiating first strikes with nuclear weapons. I think that's probably a point for Trump. Everyone already knew Clinton would hold to that. As far as Trump goes, though, some people believe that he's ready to literally go off his rocker and attack anybody with nukes at a moment's notice. He put that to sleep. I think he did that successfully. So that's a weight off of his campaign. Not really, it didn't hurt Hillary, but it did help Trump. In the future, he can't be hurt on that issue. I think that's a good one for him. Hillary also, in the prior segment, said this. Trump said this. The African-American community has been let down and abused to get votes, by Democrats specifically. I think that is going to hit home with minority voters. I think that's a point that Trump scored. Again, in the soundbite election, it's simple things, single sentences or two sentences that matter. It's not big policy issues. It's not the debate entirely. It's not even the mannerisms. It's how newsworthy, according to the internet, really, in most cases, is what you've just said. We saw this with horses and bayonets even in 2012, and the social media was nowhere near as relevant as it is in this election. So I think that was a big one. And then Hillary, she scored a point there as well shortly thereafter. She said, I prepared for this debate, when Trump was talking about, oh, I didn't do any debate prep. She said, yeah, well, I did. I'm also prepared to be president. That was probably her best line of the night, honestly. That was, you can debate over whether that's true, but it is effective. That's going to help with certain independent voters, probably those who think that sexism is at least a minor issue, as opposed to those, they don't really care about the sexism issue. If they do, and they're kind of on the fence, you know, Clinton's a little corrupt, I kind of want to support her, but maybe not, that probably got them on board with their campaign. Again, I think offset by independent voters flocking to Trump, but it would lessen the bleeding, essentially. Trump also favorably compared generals and admirals with political hacks, which is what his term for the sort of the cybersecurity personnel in the government that have largely, and this is true, endorsed Clinton. That's his way of phrasing for them. I happen to think this is an issue in which it really depends on what crowd you're consulting after this little exchange, what they think. For the younger generation, they probably don't care what some general endorses. They probably don't care that Trump's been endorsed by Lynch or endorsed by that dude with 5 medals on his chest or something. They don't care about this. That being said, some of the older voters, they don't really care if cybersecurity experts endorse Hillary Clinton, I think. That being said, even issue, nobody really gains from this. Nobody really loses on it. It's just a matter of what your personal opinion over which group of people happens to be more important to endorse a presidential candidate happens to be. He then went into the DNC mistreatment of Sanders. On the issue of Russian hacking specifically, the idea, Clinton has spent the whole campaign. He reiterated this. Oh, she talked about Russia, 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 Russia. Clinton ruminates constantly on the Russians being involved somehow with our politics. And Trump pointed out, well, we don't know who did the intrusion here. Hey, technically, he's right. The average person probably just takes it for granted that the government's telling the truth and that it was Russia, or probably was Russia. I don't know how many minds he's going to change by discounting this, by attempting to say, no, you actually don't know. But that being said, he's technically right here. But then he talks about, and this was where he scores the point, he spoke about, but the actual content of the leaked DNC emails was essentially, oh, Sanders got completely shafted. He's trying to hit that home so that some of those Bernie bros that are still undecided at this point, or maybe on a third party, will flock over to him for raising the issue on the national stage. And he might be accurate in thinking that this could happen. It'll be a very small number of people, but anything is good. Even a few tens of thousands of votes really do matter, especially when some of the races are as close as they are. They're in a statistical tie. In Colorado, it's now a statistical tie. In New Hampshire, it's basically a tie. It's a tie in North Carolina. These things matter when you're talking about that few votes potentially separating the winner and the loser. He also pointed out that Obama and Clinton formed a vacuum in Iraq. Now, this is also a matter of semantics. Again, think less about reality in an objective sense and more about perception. The perception among independents that lean right is indeed that it was the pullout, not the getting involved, that mattered. But Trump actually did something that was very wise here. He pointed out not only was it a mistake to remove our presence from Iraq when we did, but it was a mistake in the first place to get involved. Now, Clinton attacked him, of course, and said, oh, he was in support of the Iraq War. Technically, yes and no. It's not entirely clear. When he went on the Howard Stern show, which was shortly before the war began, yes, he said, yeah, it's probably a good idea to get rid of Saddam. However, he never specifically said, oh, I think we should go to war in Iraq and bring 100,000 troops with us. No, he said, get rid of Saddam. Now, I don't know why he doesn't just come out and say something to the effect of, oh, what I was suggesting is just blow his head off and be done with it. Get rid of Saddam, don't get entangled, let somebody else take over, probably kill his sons, because one of them was like, the playboy, and the other was like a complete sadist and used to torture people to death. Just get rid of them and blow off Chemical Ali's head, send in the SEALs or something, send in SEAL Team 6, and be done with it. Hopefully the state reorganizes itself in some way. He could do that. He's missing an opportunity by not doing so. But it is also true that shortly thereafter, not long after it began, he said it was a mistake. And he did, admittedly, you don't have to be a Trump fan to understand this, he did this far earlier than almost anybody else did. And that is to his credit. That is to say, technically, he did suggest getting rid of Saddam was a good idea. But nowhere does he say invading Iraq was a good idea. Again, semantics, it matters to me because the intent is totally different. Assassinating Saddam and marching in with 500,000 people, two totally different things. Trump drew the laughs of the night by saying the following. This was funny. My greatest asset is my temperament. Now, does anybody honestly take this seriously? I don't think so. Trump's temperament is highly bombastic. It's energetic. That's good. But at the same time, he tends to go off the rails and become a little bit incoherent. He tends to ramble a lot. That's not necessarily the best temperament you could have. But I think he said this in a more humorous. I think he knew, obviously, how people were going to react. He obviously knew that. I think this goes along with the huge and bigly sort of stuff that he constantly flings around. And he does this on purpose because he knows that it works psychologically on people. Trying to make himself out to be the big man, the charismatic strong man, as opposed to an opponent that is perceived generally as weaker, as more physically diminutive, as having possible health problems, and as being little more than a career sort of machine politician. In that, he scores a point here, but again, it's really more humor, and it probably will overshadow some of the other hits that he got in, and therefore, I would have warned him not to do such a thing myself. I don't think it'll hurt him that much, but it probably wasn't the greatest idea, honestly. He also pointed something else out. He knows how to win and Clinton doesn't. This was effective. This goes hand in hand with the same sort of thing that he's saying when he talks about Hillary having experience, but having bad experience. He cast her throughout the entire debate. He stumbled at first. He was more incoherent, really, in the first 10 minutes than for the rest of the entire debate, which is, again, to his credit. The end of the debate matters a little bit more. This is where he scores sort of his biggest points, which is, again, probably to his advantage. He cast her constantly as a career politician. Now, he's not wrong here. Clinton's fans don't care about that. But in an election where a lot of the undecided voters really are Trump fans that haven't backed him yet because they think that he's going to press the little red button, casting her as a dishonest, corrupt, career politician with no experience in winning works. But his best statement on this specific issue was saying, you've been in a position for 30 years. It's really 26, which he rephrased later. You've been in a position of political power for 23 years. So why haven't you solved these things yet? And she didn't really have a counter for this. I think that's effective. I think that will change minds. And I think that's also one of the things that he said that really is going to hit home with the independent voters specifically. He also said, I'm winning or tied, and I have spent almost nothing. Now, this doesn't help with the independent voters. This is to shore up his base. This is to give them more energy, more stamina, you could say, to go out and vote for him, I think, ultimately. This is for those that are already Trump fans, but they wanted, they wanted a few bones thrown their way. So he simply says, look at what I've accomplished while spending 1/10 as much as Clinton has. What will happen, over the next month or so? And it gives people within the campaign who actually already back him hope. And so they become more active. It's actually a decent strategy. He doesn't win anything with independents on this line, and he probably knows that. But at the same time, it doesn't hurt him, certainly. Now, the analysis, and I'll get to chat in a moment, showed that Trump was leading by a fairly good margin with independents throughout most of the time that he was speaking. That is probably the most important takeaway as far as the actual effect of the debate on polling. That's the most important. The most important thing that you will see in the news on social media. On the news, you'll probably see calm, cool, collected, soccer mom-looking Hillary Clinton deflects racist bully. That's probably what you'll see on most mainstream media sites tomorrow. But what you'll see on the internet, I expect, is Trump will win most of the internet polls, maybe all of them. He was way ahead with what I saw earlier. I expect that to be the case continuously. But the sound bites that you'll actually see posted around are sort of a distraction. They're important only for the internet generation. As far as the actual effect goes, though, I think it's analysis of independent voters that matters the most. Because there are your undecideds. Trump's fans back Trump. Clinton's fans back Clinton. Did either of them get their minds changed? No, because both of them stuck to the same talking points they've been on. If Hillary Clinton's talking points were going to change the mind of Trump voters, they already would have changed their minds. If Trump's talking points were going to swing a bunch of Hillary voters in his direction, it already would have happened. Neither of them scored anything with partisan voters. That was never the intent. When you're in a debate with somebody, your goal should not be to change the mind of the person you're debating. You're not going to do it most of the time. Your goal should be to change the mind of an unbiased party or an undecided party, even one that leans a little bit one way or the other, who is simply observing the debate. That's the true tactic of debating. That's what some people don't understand. They think that you're supposed to change your opponent's mind. No, generally speaking, you're never going to do it. You can show that their arguments are logically inconsistent. Do they care? No, their cognitive dissonance kicks in. Doesn't matter. Overall, how they looked, their presentation, Trump was bombastic and combative. We all knew that was going to happen. This is what he does at every rally. It's just the way that he talks. Hillary Clinton appeared to be a bit smarmy and school teacher-ish, nervously laughing at the beginning, sort of sarcastically laughing towards the end. Again, it's her normal demeanor. Therefore, on appearance and charisma, no major win, no major loss for either of them. It doesn't affect the trajectory of the race. What the real thing is here, the real takeaway is there are a handful, 3 or 4 sound bites that'll be perpetuated as memes into infinity. The big one will be Hillary Clinton saying, yeah, Clinton's got experience. It's bad experience. I predict that that's the biggest one of the night. And the second would be independent, unbiased observers. What did they think? It doesn't matter what I think. I've already said I'm going to vote for Trump. It doesn't matter what most of you think. Most of you have already decided who you're voting for. Some of you aren't in the U.S. Of course, you're not voting in this election. Maybe you're voting. I don't know. But for those that are undecided, it matters to them. And a lot of people remain undecided in this election. That would be the big takeaway, I would say. So overall, again, just to recap my estimate, my analysis, Trump has a slight advantage in the first debate. It is an underwhelming advantage. It's not a huge, bigly advantage, as Trump might put it. But it is an advantage because Clinton did exactly what everyone expected. But nobody knew what to expect from Trump. I have a feeling, and this is just a guess, that a lot of people only tuned into this because Trump was there. Can you imagine, do you think 100 million people would have watched Clinton debating Jeb Bush? Of course not. Maybe 10 million people would have watched it. Would it be almost matching Super Bowl viewership? No, absolutely not. People tuned in because they wanted to see if Trump would go off the rails, if he'd go nuts, if he'd say something really stupid, or if he'd attack Clinton or say something sexist. That's why they tuned in. That's why I tuned in. You think I would have even bothered to watch the debate if it were Hillary Clinton versus Jeb Bush, Hillary Clinton versus Little Marco? I wouldn't have watched because I already know what would be said. It'd be a neocon and a neolib arguing over how to screw people. Instead, you have Trump somewhat coherently at times making the argument that we should change the course, as opposed to Clinton. The generalization you can make here is Clinton says, stay the course, things are fine. Don't rock the boat because that's scary. Trump says, yeah, we're going to rock the boat. We're going to rock it in a completely different direction. Get out your oars because we're about to go off a waterfall and we need to go somewhere else. That's essentially what the whole fucking election boils down to. If you think things are fine, you're voting for Clinton. Guaranteed. 100% of you are. If things are going well for you, you're a Clinton voter. If things aren't, you're a Trump voter. That's just the way ultimately that it is. The only other people that are really switching to Trump are people who would be voting for Clinton, except for the DNC leaks, which I think is another one of her greatest disadvantages. Now, it is, how long have I been recording here? I don't even know. Let's see. Where's the fucking timer? I don't even know. Well, it could be because I partially minimized this. And my voice is a little bit weak right now. I was like singing Chatelet earlier, so you know, voice is gonna be the first thing to go when I get old, honestly, considering how much I fucking talk. Yeah, screw it, it doesn't matter. I wish I had water to drink, but like an idiot, I decided not to bring any in here. I think I'm gonna get a quick, well, actually, is it even worth my time to bother? Nah, fuck it. I'll just talk here for like 10 minutes. I am going to address chat now briefly, but there are so many of you in the room here, it's going to be difficult for me to actually respond to this. And I can close the notes out. I don't need those anymore. Let me clear my throat a little bit. Yeah, I see the Pepe posting and stuff. By the way, I don't moderate the chat. I don't care what you post. If you're posting something like totally off the wall, like, you know, hang black people or something, somebody else might flag you and you might, you know, get banned for it. It has nothing to do with me. I believe in free speech. Just if you could not do the Pepe spamming, though, be a little bit appreciated. Yes, we know that you're a Pepe fan. So I am looking at chat now, but there are literally 1,800 people watching. It's going to be difficult here to, yeah, Bobby Jones. I figured Bobby Jones would definitely watch the live stream. So yeah, you have my analysis here. I'm just gonna try not to look at chat. It's going too fast for me, honestly. My analysis is Trump's slight advantage, but not a big advantage, which is, you know, fairly straightforward. That is, he didn't crush her. He didn't knock it out of the park completely, but he met expectations in the sense that he didn't say anything sexist that can trigger like the social justice warriors and their mimetic machine. He didn't, you know, randomly go off about Muslims evil, you know, ISIS chopping off heads or something like at a rally. This really might help him with those same independent voters. I think that's more what people were worried about. They're not worried about Trump being incoherent because a lot of them are backing Trump despite his verbal deficiencies at times. They don't care about that. They care about the content of the message. As opposed to Clinton, a lot of people just tuned her out. Probably 75% of the people watching, they're only watching for Trump. So I'm going to go through here. Yeah. Well, it wasn't Polit Joe. It isn't technically a draw. Trump victory, but by a very small margin. And then only because a couple of the top lines of the night were his as opposed to Clinton's. She was more boring. He was more bombastic. He realizes that will drive the creation of literal shitposting on Twitter and everywhere else. Like, look at this video. Would I be making this stream right now if it had been Jeb muttering about the war in Iraq and Clinton muttering about the war in Iraq? No, I would not. It wouldn't have happened. And Clinton would probably be on speedy track to be the next president of the United States, based solely on her experience, so-called. Which is, again, Trump's big line. Hillary has experience, but it's bad experience. And if he continues to echo that, I think he'll find that that's very, very effective if he continues to use this. I'm getting tired of watching myself here on the video, so I'm actually going to put the feed over the stream. That looks much better. Now I can't see myself on the other screen there. It was warping me out here. I'm seeing two of myself. It's like I got mushrooms on my eyes, man. Will her trying to downplay Trump's points make any impact on independence? No. because they're undecided voters, unless they're like independents who have already made up their mind, in which case maybe. No, if somebody's an undecided voter, it's the point that matters, not really the deflection quite so much in most cases, unless it's a really good deflection. Like with Trump and his tax returns. Doesn't matter if he deflects on this, but when he brought up Clinton's emails and put the onus on her, that might help. To a limited degree. He still takes a hit there, but he's also countering a little bit. It's sort of it's just a tit for tat, as opposed to scoring nothing and getting a demerit. You cause your opponent to get a demerit, well, you're getting one, so you're even. That's essentially how it goes. Yes, you're still getting the demerit, but so is your opponent, so all things are even. That's sort of what deflection means in the debate sense. Both of them were doing it, by the way. It's not just Trump able to do this. Hillary Clinton deflected hits from him as well, just less ably, because they came so quickly. She didn't have really, apparently, time to prepare for the upcoming hit each time it happened. Yeah, comments are going so fast that I may not even see your comment if you post it, so keep that in mind. Yeah. Stop and frisk. Specifically, I do not believe in stop and frisk. I also recognize this. That is not the reason why crime in New York City fell. New York City crime fell at the same time that all other crime was falling everywhere else in the country. But the average independent voter doesn't give a fuck about that. It sounds good, and Trump made the point that it would work, and it doesn't really matter if Hillary Clinton points out, correctly by the way, that it wasn't singularly stop and frisk that did this. It doesn't matter. Facts do not matter. It's presentation. Politics is an illusion. What are politicians best at? They're best at getting elected. Doesn't matter if they have a grasp on economics. They can know nothing. They can't even add half the time, and yet they manage economies. Think about that for a moment. It doesn't matter if the politician is skilled. Trump's additional advantage, he has been largely in the private marketplace making money. He makes the argument, hey, if I simply apply the way that I turned a few $1 million into billions of dollars to the national scale, if I simply scale it up to the size of a country, we can win again. And the average person thinks that's reasonable. It makes sense. Therefore, I'm going to go with it. Clinton can deny it all that she wants, but independent voters are going to respond to that. That's why presentation is, as far as the incoherence we saw from Trump, no, it doesn't matter. If it mattered, he wouldn't have any supporters. He acts like that at every single rally he holds, almost without exception. With the exception of his press conferences, he is never low-key. He is always bombastic and always rambles. And it seems to work. He goes to a swing state. He gets 20,000 fucking people there to listen to him speak. He didn't do that by completely fucking up his own support because he was incoherent. Nobody cares about that. Just like Clinton's fans, they don't care that she's boring or smarmy or laughs nervously. They don't give a crap. Nobody cares. They're technically right to. What does presentation mean? Just because somebody grows incoherent and rambles doesn't mean they're not smart. Just because somebody seems smarmy doesn't mean that they're not smart or skilled or something like that. Substance should be what's spoken of at the debates. We've seen an all-out abandonment. 2012 was the first election where it was kind of abandoned. Because they wanted the sound clips, they wanted the YouTube questions at the town hall debate and stuff. And so a little bit of that went out the window. But this time they totally abandoned it. Completely. No substance. Zero. Not one single specific plan was mentioned during this entire debate. Now, I'm not upset about that. It might as well be a cage match. Because if they talk about substance, if they lay out the specifics of their plan, like Herman Cain with the 999 plan, are they actually going to follow through with it? Not most of the time, no. Obama says, I'm going to close Gitmo. Gitmo's still open. Oh, I'm going to not go to war with anyone else. Oh, hey, can I bomb Syria? It's just a laughing stock. Now, half of this is posturing. The other half is outright dishonesty. It doesn't matter if specifics are told. So I don't care that the debate devolved into little more than a shouting match at times. That's probably better. Yeah, it's lowbrow. Yeah, it doesn't take a high intellect to enjoy it. But at the same time, does it take a high intellect to watch a couple morons talk about plans they're never going to follow through and actually believe them? Yeah, it doesn't. So no, nothing lost there. What do I think about the moderator? Good. He did a good job. He was more or less, he didn't even really talk that much other than when he was asking a question. They kept talking past their allotted time and cutting each other off and responding so much. He spoke like 50% of the time that he was otherwise allotted to ask all the questions in the debate. I had no problem with the moderator at all. Trump was, if any of Trump's fans thought the moderator was the cause of incoherence or people thought badly about Trump, had nothing to do with the moderator. He did a good job, honestly. Will Donald release the delegates? I don't know. I don't know if little Lion Ted is going to release the delegates to Donald. I do know that he'll release some boogers to Donald, though. Well, Lester Holt might be a dick, but he did an okay job. He wasn't particular. I mean, it's obvious who he's biased towards. That's one thing, but he didn't let it get in the way of his official capacity, more or less. I think he did a good job. Certainly, with Trump and Clinton repeatedly interrupting each other, he did a better job than he would have been expected to do under such circumstances. You don't envy him his job. Would you have wanted to moderate that debate? You'd be sitting there awestruck, and you'd ask one question, and they'd just talk over each other for the next hour and a half, probably. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with Lester Holt. It's all right. Yes, addressing Chicago for Trump was a win. Because for minorities actually living there, especially with Illinois apparently within 7 points, it's now only a lean blue state, not a solid blue state. It's technically in play. Mentioning Chicago and the crime there was a good thing for Trump to do. He should have mentioned Rahm Emanuel. He should have mentioned, oh yeah, Obama's buddy that's the mayor of Chicago has completely abandoned the black community there to kill each other off and die. And he should have struck back, by the way. If I had been Trump, I would have said this. When Hillary Clinton said, oh, well, I find it sad that he speaks so low of black communities, I would have said, do you live in a black community? Do you spend time in a black community? No, you spend time in a gated community. You don't even hold rallies in these places because you're too fucking intimidated. Why don't you go there and you can see the crime? You can see the broken windows and the graffiti. And you wouldn't envy these people their position, and you would support law and order in the inner cities. Oh, he would have been elected right then if he had pointed something like that out. Unfortunately, again, his rambling gets ahead of him. It keeps him from scoring those big hits that could essentially end the election in a single soundbite. Instead, it's death by 1,000 cuts. He hits her over and over, but none of them are as effective as they could have been if he was just a little bit quicker on the draw as far as responding to some of these things. That being said, again, soundbite of the night, as far as I'm concerned, was Hillary has experience, but it's bad experience. This essentially encapsulates in a single sentence what Trump said all night, which is she's a career politician, screwed up in Libya, screwed up in Iraq, screwed up alongside Obama in Iraq, screwing up in Syria, doesn't really know how to handle things, had 30 years, more or less, to solve all these problems, never did. It encapsulates everything he said about her. That's why it's such an effective line. Hillary Clinton, meanwhile, she did score hits against him, but I don't see them as effective as those that Trump scored in a social media election. That's my analysis anyway. Yes, Trump sniffing probably had a cold, but he didn't pass out on the stage. He didn't suddenly start coughing. So I don't say yeah, okay. Health issues. If somebody cares about the health of the candidate, I would think passing out on 9/11 is probably a little bit worse than sniffing at the debate. So, not a major issue. Not for me, and I can't imagine for anybody else. Is it going to change anybody's mind? Is somebody going to see the candidate sniffing a little bit more than average? I'm not going to vote for him. Now, I think the passing out's a little bit more important than that. To Mathrock H, who do I think won? Trump by a hair, but only by a hair. He lost so many opportunities to attack her with so much more fervor that he held himself back through his incoherence. That being said, Clinton didn't score that many points. He did. But where he scored them, they were much more limited generally than they could have been. So he doesn't get a landslide debate victory. He gets a by the hair of his chin victory over Clinton. But it is still technically advantage Trump. You might say that that's a microcosm of the whole election. Right now, Trump is up a little bit. but it's a very, very slim margin. If you trust the poll's accuracy, that is. That's what I would say. Yes, Trump won slightly, essentially, but only slightly. As in, if he had pulled a few more punches, he would have lost. Which he can't do that at the other debates. He needs to do better than that. He needs to be a little bit more calm and collected and think a little bit more before he speaks, and he could have the election. Like at the next debate, he can knock it out of the park then, score a couple really big points, end the election right then and there, instead of dragging it out. Now he has to go out to campaign, and he also has to hope, by the way, if he doesn't intend to calm down at the next two debates, he has to hope WikiLeaks leak is really, really juicy too. Otherwise, there's still the risk he could lose the election. I still say, essentially, right now, I still give Trump a 90% chance of winning. He has the slight advantage in polling. He did a little bit better at the debate. It's looking up for him. He's raising more money too. And he's doing this while being outspent 10 to 1. That's a good sign for him. He also has the possibility of much higher turnout, I would say, as well as independents last minute flocking to him. I think they will, by the way. But he can't count on that. He has to operate from the assumption that he'll have lower turnout, that independents will swing towards Clinton. He wants to lead by 3 or 4 points in the general going in to the election. He doesn't want to lead by half a point. That's crazy talk. It'd be horrible for that to be his plan. I don't think it is, but he needs to buckle down a little bit more. Yeah. Yeah, I think Jeb right now must be a sad man, but he always has been. Now, hasn't he? He was counting on winning South Carolina. It didn't work out too well for him. Didn't he come in 4th there or some crazy thing like that, or maybe 3rd? And then Marco Rubio, he was like, oh, he got a 3-2-1 plan. Well, you got the 3, then you got a 5, then you got another 3. It doesn't work out so well. That's, by the way, that's Hillary's problem is math right now. States she was counting on being solidly blue are no longer solidly blue. She's having, like I predicted now, around the time of Super Tuesday, I said in this election, parts of the Rust Belt, states that haven't been in play in several cycles will come into play, and it will work to Trump's advantage if he's the nominee. And at the time I was saying he likely would be. And that has come true. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Colorado, Virginia technically in play, but I count it as a solid blue state at this point. Just like Ohio now is solid red. Iowa is solid red. There's no longer a competition there. Trump's won those states unless he completely collapses. North Carolina now is growing more red. Nevada as well, Florida. And that gets him almost there. He just needs one more halfway decent state. If he gets Colorado, which it looks like he's probably going to get, he wins the election. Now, I think he wants to win in a landslide. I think to feed his ego. I don't think he wants to win, with 271 electoral votes. I think he wants a mandate because it'll feed his ego. It's also why I think his policies might do fairly well, because he can't feed his ego unless people are applauding him. If they think that he's a shitty president, he doesn't get to feed the ego. He cares what other people think. This is probably the biggest mythology about Trump that's been spun. Oh, he doesn't care about anybody but himself. No, I think he cares a lot more than you think. I think he cares a lot more than the normal person does. And I think that's specifically why he's done well. That's why he's winning the election. He cares about his family. He cares about his friends and so forth. He's probably done them all sorts of solids. He does solids for politicians all the time, too. Now he's trying to claim that ultimate title, President of the United States, as the final little gem in his crown, so that when he dies, he can say, well, I accomplished everything. I became super, super rich, mega celebrity, and I was the President of the United States. Who can fucking beat that? And he's right. That would be the ultimate sort of capstone in the arch of his tomb there, so to speak. Hillary Clinton did not look drugged. Now, people kept saying, oh, she's going to shit her pants at the debate. What did I say? No, I expect her to show up. She'll be in good health. If she really is terminally ill, on death's doorstep, they probably shot her full of so much medicine you never would notice. So why would there be a reason to expect that she'd have a coughing fit or something? It's never going to happen. Maybe maybe she'll be worn down by the 3rd debate. She'll devolve into a coughing fit. But the 1st debate, no. They probably pumped her full of enough drugs to kill a muskox if she's actually sick at all, if those claims are actually true, which could be so. There is reason to suggest it's possible. If not, Well, then it would be only make sense that she'd be doing fine. Trump was the one with the sniffles. Apparently, people are talking about that on Twitter. Again, though, are you going to remember that in a week? What are you going to remember from this debate in a week? Oh, man, it was a cage match. It was great. They were going at each other's throats the whole time. I mean, really, with that sort of level of chaos being widely applauded, works to Trump's advantage. Because anyone who likes that chaos, Trump's probably growing on them, and he just got a chance to do that in front of a national stage, a true national stage. Not, oh, yeah, the people watching late night news, but, over 100 million people within the U.S. alone. He just got to do that. So, pretty good. Yeah, coffin fit. Yeah. What should Trump do next time? Tone it the fuck down. You've made your point. You've attacked your opponent. The next time, buckle down and look presidential, because it'll be about time to do so. If he doesn't, he runs the risk of alienating some of those independent voters. Well, will he do that, or will he continue to not bother to do debate prep? I think for somebody who did no prep, to have at least a slight advantage over someone who's got almost 30 years in politics, that's pretty damn impressive. I think that even the left-wing media would have to admit that. Even the CNNs and MSNBCs would have to say somebody who did absolutely nothing to prepare. And he did remarkably well, honestly, for somebody who's never been in politics, to go up against someone, First Lady, Senator, Secretary of State, and do well against them without any prep is a sight to behold, even if he grew incoherent at times. But he needs to do better next time and be more coherent. He needs to buckle down. He needs to assure those that are looking at the way he acts, which is a minority of voters, but they matter. He needs to assure them that he's not off kilter, because they're not paying attention to what he said and the fact that he didn't call for the gassing of Muslims. They're watching the way he speaks. They're watching his body language. That's how they understand who he is as a person. They watched Clinton. They probably thought a little smarmy, but ultimately acting sane. They looked at Trump and they said, oh, bombastic. Yeah, the tales are true. He really is really high energy. He's also a little bit scary. To people who don't understand him fully on a psychological level, it would be a little bit odd to see. It would be a little bit frightening, perhaps, to think of that sort of personality being in the White House in control of a nuclear arsenal and the world's most sophisticated military. Now, those who realize partially this is just a stage show aren't so worried, but the undecided voters largely don't realize that, I think. That's the hazard that he runs if he doesn't calm down at the next debate. Will Gary Johnson's numbers rise because of this debate? No. They'll probably fall, honestly. Third-party numbers tend to fall towards the end of the election. It's possible that trend will be bucked. It's possible there'll be like a Perot situation here, but I don't think so. I think Gary Johnson will stall out. 10% would be sort of his upper limit. If he gets that, he should consider himself lucky. And by the way, it'd be pretty historic for the Libertarian Party. It'd be about 4 times what they got in the last elections. It would be a huge improvement. And that's with a lackluster candidate, let's face it, who is almost a walking self-satire at this point. I'm glad that I got off the Johnson bus when I got the chance, because now he's making an ass of himself in more ways than just what is Aleppo. His response to being asked, oh, well, if you were on the debate stage, do you believe that you could change people's minds? He said, yeah, no one could talk like this and I'd still win. It was, what the hell is this idiot smoking? We all know what he's smoking. At this point, he's not even a libertarian. I'm prepared to say Gary Johnson is not taking libertarianism as an ideology seriously. He just happens to be in the Libertarian Party. Clearly, more libertarians than not don't appear to understand their own ideology. I think a lot of them are burnouts. That's rather sad. Hopefully it's temporary. The Libertarian Party will soldier on and rebuild from the ashes when it becomes clear this is a flash in the pan. That, I think, has been shoved to the side as an issue on the paradigm shift, temporarily, for a cycle at least. For the next 4 years, we'll see what happens. And if Clinton wins, the Libertarian Party will rise much more quickly because you'll see 4 more years of Obama. And it's obvious that that kind of political landscape has helped to lead to the Libertarian Party's rise. It'd be helpful if Clinton won. To the Libertarians, it would be helpful if she won. Honestly. If Trump wins and he does well, he could destroy the Libertarian movement for 20 years, honestly. Yes, I still predict that Trump has an advantage, But people must not think I'm predicting that he'll win. I haven't made that final prediction yet. I can't make that until we're much closer to the actual general election, because anything could happen. Trump could have a stroke tomorrow. Clinton could have a stroke tomorrow. One of them could get hit by a car. There could be an assassination attempt. One of them could get massive food poisoning, shit all over themselves on stage. One of them could make a huge verbal error. One thing that I think is funny is you haven't seen a big impact from gaffes in this election cycle now, have you? Other than the deplorables comment. But Trump makes them so often, people have become desensitized. That's another layer of security on his support. I think at this point, a lot of people don't care if he makes mistakes. They don't care if he tells an outright lie. As long as he effectively covers it in the same sentence, they don't even care. Yeah. They poisoned Donald. No, nobody poisoned Trump. Yes, the fact that there are more leaks forthcoming figures heavily into my estimation of Trump's advantage. If they remain tied and you have a major leak from WikiLeaks regarding the Clinton campaign, then Trump wins the election, essentially. That's my theory, anyway. Huma. What about the VP debate? It's going to be boring. Honestly, watching Pence and Kaine argue, they'll probably stick more to policy. So it'll be really, really, really fucking boring. I don't even know if I'll watch, honestly, the vice presidential candidate. I don't care about either of them. I don't like either of them. I've made it clear. I don't like Mike Pence. I also don't like Tim Kaine. So why would I care what they have to say? They're just vestigial at this point. Yeah, Trump did that. Again, for anyone that's new to the stream, I am saying Trump won this debate, but it was only by a hair's width. It was a very, very meager win. He could have done a lot better if he had not rambled so much, but it's still a win. He should take it. The fact that he was already a little bit up in the national polling, all things considered, means this inches him ahead just a little bit more. I could be wrong, though. It could be that the public will interpret this in a completely different manner. Maybe the sort of things that I said that had been said that I thought were effective will be completely ignored, and all people talk about is Trump sniffles or Hillary's eyes or something. This is a weird election, so it could be I'm completely wrong here. But that's just my anticipation, based on my understanding of politics as it is. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Did I not proclaim that the online polls largely would say Trump won by large margins, 65 or more? That's what I said. Whereas the mainstream media tomorrow, wait until you see the headlines on all their sites, and you probably see many of them tonight. They'll say Trump incoherent, Trump didn't give policy specifics, and Clinton will get a pass. She didn't give any specifics either, but they're not going to mention that. And that's a lie by omission. I've spoken about this in regards to PolitiFact all election long, but it doesn't matter. The mainstream media is now so untrusted, nobody gives a damn. If somebody's still paying attention to MSNBC and cares what they say, they're already voting for Clinton. They're not going to change any minds by fact-checking or spinning anything. Just like Trump fans, they're all paying attention to Drudge. Who do you think won the election, says Drudge, as though the outcome wasn't already predetermined. Everyone knew, yeah, the second that the poll went live, Trump would skyrocket. Because the average I almost said Trump there. The average Drudge viewer, little bit funny to me, admittedly. The average Drudge viewer saw Trump beat the shit out of Ted Cruz. They applauded him for that. I remember the Ted Cruz fans were livid at Drudge during the primaries. And they hate Clinton. Of course they do. Drudge is like the standard bearer of anti-Clinton media. So it's no surprise. But then again, I'm looking like heavy.com. He's winning there, nj.com and so forth. Again, predetermined. It's obvious that Trump, in the eyes of the tech literate, would be the winner. That are watching it on streams, that are seeing analysis like this, in many cases, right after the debate. But for those who pay attention to the legacy media, they're going to see Clinton wins debate, probably. And I'd be surprised if not. If you do see the mainstream news tomorrow and any of them are saying, oh, well, Clinton looked bored or Clinton cackled too much or something, then it's the death knell of her candidacy. But I don't expect that you'll see that, no. Yeah, nobody cares about Trump's tax returns. They also don't care about, like, Benghazi. I saw someone saying, oh, he should have talked about Benghazi. Nobody fucking cares about Benghazi. it was talked about so much that if it was going to change anybody's mind, it's already been changed. Nobody who's supporting Clinton cares about Benghazi enough to switch their vote. Talk about something else. Talk about super predators. That's something that hasn't been exploited enough, and Trump brought it up. Very effective jab at Hillary Clinton. This could swing more of the minority vote in his direction. It's not unthinkable. He's already ahead of where McCain or Romney were with black voters and Hispanics. He's also getting up there with female voters to the point at which he might supplant Hillary Clinton with her own demographic. If he does that, the election is also over. With Illinois being a 7-point race in favor of Clinton instead of what it was before, it was like 15 points in 2012 or some ungodly high number. With Colorado now being basically a dead heat, yeah, Trump's got an advantage right now, of course. Yeah, Janet Yellen and the Fed. Trump threw that bone out for maybe some of the leaning libertarian voters, as well as for maybe the alt-right fans. The independent voters, they don't know anything about the Fed. Nobody does. Do you honestly know that much about where currency comes from, what determines its value, stock markets, and how to predict them? No, because if you did, you'd probably be a multimillionaire. You probably wouldn't be watching this right now, honestly. So I don't claim to know that much about economics. I say, yeah, the stock market eventually will probably crash again because it's always done so in the past. Yeah, China's a paper tiger because, compare it to this economy and that economy, it keeps having these problems. The USSR has problems. Russia's still having problems. But I don't pretend to be some expert on fiat currency or anything like that. I think other people should probably follow in that. If you've got like a degree in economics, yeah, maybe you know. But even then, there's different schools of economics. Are you an Austrian or Keynesian or a Marxist or, exactly what's objective about this? It's all opinion. Yeah. People are using the occult anyway. Yeah, Bitcoin's fine. Well, Clinton didn't want to mention China because she doesn't want the fact that she took so much money from China coming to light. Back in the 90s, slush funds, soft money from China was a big thing in regards to Clintons. I remember the last Mad magazine issue and their good night poem there for Bill Clinton for the end of his presidency. I can remember the last Mad magazine that came out during his presidency. It was like good night lies, good night fries, good night soft money with Chinese ties. And it showed him he had like a lamp and a bed hat on, and he was like looking under his bed at this pile of Chinese currency and stuff. I remember that. It was hilarious. Still is. I like Mad Magazine, by the way. I haven't subscribed in years. I think they knocked it down to 6 issues a year. It's like, what the fuck? I wanted to see the 666th issue. I don't care about it anymore. But what's in the October releases? Something from the Clinton campaign. That's all I know. And if it's big, it'll crush her campaign. But Trump can't get complacent, even if he knows what's in them. He should prepare for the worst. He should assume that Clinton suddenly begins regaining ground. And he should operate from that assumption. Keep stress on himself, work harder, and do what he needs to do. It's what Clinton should do, by the way, too. She shouldn't operate. She operated there for about a month. She obviously was operating from the assumption that Trump had been so gaffe-ridden that he was no longer a viable opponent. So she didn't hold enough fundraisers. She didn't hold enough rallies. She didn't amp up her online framework enough. And she didn't make enough media appearances because there was no pressure for her to do so. She became complacent, and then Trump started crushing her. That's why she now has to make up lost time. Trump can't afford to do that. Not this close to November. If he does that now, he's toast. And he knows that. He's not actually going to do it. There's no chance of it. But he can't. Yeah, what me worry, Alfred E. Newman. No, I don't even know what Bobby Jones is saying, but I can imagine it's something Mao, something Stalin, petit bourgeois or something like that. These comments are still going so quickly, it's almost difficult to respond to any of them, honestly. Now, no, I'm not taking my shirt off on cam. Maybe that'll be like a 100 subscriber bonus video or something. I'm just joking there. What do you think of John Oliver and his remarks in Toronto? I don't keep up with John Oliver. I don't like crazy British current year dude myself. Any more than I don't keep up with like the right-wing comedians either. It's like, what's that dude who comes on O'Reilly's show every once in a while? Miller, I think it is. He's so political now. It's not even really funny. Yeah, he's sarcastic. He's got a dry wit. Okay, well, do a stand-up tour that actually matters, that somebody who doesn't just find humor in politics might watch. Make jokes about religion, like Dennis Leary. Make jokes about drug use, like Bill Cosby, Bill Clinton's apparent compatriot. Yeah, Bill Clinton gets laid every night. It's just a matter of what he's laying and possibly who he's laying. It's a big issue. And you saw, Trump didn't go after Bill now, did he? Other than like the NAFTA era. That's by design. He can't go after Bill. If he does that, Hillary calls him a bully and the election's over too. He knows better. Maybe on Twitter. He can get away with it online. He can't get away with it on a national stage in front of 100 million people. Hello, Metal Grinch. No, I didn't see Mark Cuban there. I don't care about Mark Cuban. I get tired of people mentioning Bill Hicks stealing Dennis Leary stealing from Bill Hicks. I get tired of that. I like Dennis Leary. I don't care if he stole his material. He delivers it in a funny manner, and that's more than 90% of the job. I expect Clinton... what do I expect Clinton to hit Trump with in the next debate? I'm not sure whatever he talks about until then. Or you could see a repeat. In the next debate, what you might end up seeing is largely the same thing you saw at this debate rephrased, in which case the third debate will have a lot lower viewership. Because they're both keeping to the same sort of tested talking points so much. Trump's more organic and experimental. Clinton's more like focus group based. They're holding to them. You saw this in the debate. That's why they didn't talk about substance at all. They're holding to them so much. There's really not that much else that they can say, except that they can dig through the same info and maybe find different ways to insult one another. It's actually quite funny. This election, I will say, not the apolitical, but those that are more bitter about politics in general, they're right when they say that this election is a freak show. It is. It's a complete farce. From wall to wall, this election has no substance. It never has. There was never any substance in the Democratic debates any more than the Republican debates. It's just they were so boring, people didn't bother to fact check them. Nobody cares about substance right now. It's all appearances. This is all an illusion. It's all a stage show. That much is clear. It's about delivery and charisma, and specifically how the attack is formulated. But that being said, because politicians never actually do what they're elected to do, as in what they've promised to do, does it really matter? Does anybody care that they're lying or telling half truths? No, nobody cares about that. Nobody cares. It's a reason to be bitter if you care about the state of the country, but it's also a reason to be entertained, I suppose. Who is better dressed? I'll take the person who didn't look like a communist dictator for 5,000, Alec. Yeah. For those who want to see the coat, yeah. Put the hood on, I guess. There. Now I don't have to see the bright light of the screen anymore and hide myself. Just be, yeah. Now it's wizard time. No, I don't predict. Everyone thought that Obama would get knocked off if he was elected, and he didn't, did he? Well, same with Trump. No, nobody's stupid enough to do that. In the past, it was, I don't know, maybe it was easier back then. These people, like Trump and Clinton, they wear body armor anywhere they go anyway, so I wouldn't be worried about either of them really getting knocked off. There aren't that many people that are really willing to risk, oh, yeah, I've been in prison for 50 years just to do that. There aren't that many people that are willing to make that kind of judgment, which is probably a good thing, because if they're willing to do that, they'd probably be killing everybody, so... thankfully, people aren't that psychopathic. No, I do not believe that Hillary's in the occult. I think she has no views beyond the secular whatsoever. She panders to evangelicals. Maybe she's got some of that like bigoted Southern Baptist style mentality. But does she like go and pray regularly? No, I don't think so. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so corrupt. Same with Trump. He's not religious. That's why I've said over and over again, it's obvious he's not religious, or he wouldn't have been in his line of work, honestly, to begin with. Therefore, I don't think he actually gives a fuck about gay marriage, abortion, and stuff. He hasn't talked about him on the campaign trail, and it's not just because of pragmatism. It's also because he knows that people will know he's bullshitting if he makes some big issues. Because he doesn't care if you're gay. Go ahead and fucking get married, as long as again, you're getting taxed on it somehow. It is a form of statism, but it's not social regressivism. It's not bigotry. It's Trump, with a businessman mentality, I suppose. But no, Hillary wasn't reading a teleprompter. She was just being more measured. That's both good and bad. It's good if you've got something good to say. The problem is, like with Trump's line of the night, Hillary's got experience, it's bad experience. She's also got a lot of things to say, but they're the wrong things. She's not as effective a speaker as she could have been either. She could have been more soaring about it. Instead, she sort of talks with a monotone. She's a little bit too sarcastic and smarmy, a little bit holier than thou, as Trump pointed out, and a little bit almost too educated. She's got to realize the average voter doesn't know really anything about any major issues. She's talking down to them. Trump, meanwhile, just rambles. He talks incoherently. He realizes that people understand that more than they understand Hillary's stump lecture. Yeah, she's smarmy. That's the best way to put it. She comes off as that boring professor or the school teacher you didn't like who always used to knock your grade down or something like that. Or Dolores Umbridge, as I've pointed out. Yeah, I know I can pause chat, but then I'll have to repeatedly slide it up and down over and over. Oh, is somebody trolling Bobby with an account? Somebody must be cloning him or something. By the way, to anyone who doesn't already know, Bobby Jones is a troll. Bobby Jones is Spud Croyley from Wilberg fame. That's why he's on that. Why do you think I don't ban him for saying like commie stuff or saying like burn the flag or something? I know it's not actually serious. He also says, I am the white and the white man will rise again on some of his alternate accounts. So he doesn't take this seriously. It's a joke. I shit post too. I just don't do it on YouTube. So I don't have a problem with him there. I have a problem with pretend communism. Yeah, bendy trees. That sounds good. Yeah. I do admire Bobby Jones. He's very committed. He was trolling probably before I was, honestly. Yeah, I'm not surprised he's a bit ahead with the time poll. And by the way, that one is harder to rig with a botnet. So that probably gives a more adequate view of the actual result. If you're going by Drudge, yeah, it's going to be like 99% Trump. If you go on some poll like Salon through Twitter, yeah, it's going to be Clinton won. With a time poll, it's probably a little bit closer to reality. If it's showing 59 for Trump, 41 for Clinton, that's pretty good. That's about where I would expect it to be, honestly. He didn't have a big victory, but he did have a victory. Trying to underscore that, even if it's only a very small one, it's still there. And that's important because a lot of people probably expected him to bomb. By the way, if he has even a slight advantage, the majority of people thought Clinton was going to run away with it. They thought she'd completely knock him out. And obviously she didn't do that. He went on the attack. Some of them failed, but he did manage to land a couple of good hits. And that is good for his campaign going forward. Being aggressive may work out. Who knows? Trump has defied everybody's advice so far, and it's worked for him. He's winning now. He won the primaries. He destroyed his opponent after opponent in the debates. He's winning now in the general. He's slightly favored over Clinton now. Who would have thought that? Because if you had listened to people in the mainstream media back, before New Hampshire and Iowa and all the first states voted, you would have said, oh, well, he's just a chucklehead. He'll never make it. He's got zero chances. He would never get funding with his platform. The party would never accept him. He's, crazy. He's just a reality show star. But then again, they were saying that about Arnold Schwarzenegger now, weren't they? And Arnold became governor of California, no less, while being a Republican. So I think, how that worked out. And he did a pretty damn good job. Look at Jesse Ventura. Gary Johnson, he's this fucking weed head. He becomes governor too. What's he most famous for? He's got big biceps and he climbs mountains all the time, and he owns a weed edibles company. And yet he becomes governor. He's a presidential candidate, polling almost in the double digits. Who would have thought? At least when he dies, he can put that on his gravestone. His life wasn't a loss. People will remember him, even if he is a fake libertarian. No, I didn't say that Trump would crush her. I said that Trump would win the debate, and he did. It's just, for me, I have to separate my personal judgment from the analysis. My personal judgment is, yeah, he crushed her. Everything Hillary said basically was a lie. He had both of the most major hits of the night. But my analysis of that victory is that people, undecided voters, I'm a Trump supporter now, undecided voters won't rate him as highly as I rate his experience. I've got to remember, I've been analyzing politics for years. I know about politics. I know about logic. I know about debate tactics. The average voter in the undecided category doesn't. They're not going to see it the same as I do. And therefore, it's their perception that matters. My perception doesn't fucking matter. You know, what I'm talking about here, I can say these are the hits of the night. That list will be more or less intact, I would assume, because those are the things that draw in your attention. Sort of a universal thing if you're in the English-speaking world. Certain phrases delivered certain ways are going to affect you more. But the way people analyze that will be different. Like, I don't care that Hillary Clinton is female. I don't care that Trump's never held office. Some people do. So I have to take that into consideration. That being said, yeah, he won the debate, but he didn't win it by a big margin. Nor, by the way, I mean, did anybody expect that he was going to completely and utterly annihilate her? No, obviously not. Banter. Yeah. I don't think it's Reddit here. I think it's probably 4chan. Yeah, the 400-pound hacker thing was extremely funny. Again, not a hit, not a miss. It's not going to affect the numbers anyway, but it was funny. Thinking about a 400-pound person hacking Hillary's emails, it is possible, by the way. That is definitely a possibility. Could have been anyone. Could have been some fucking 12-year-old in Thailand. Hillary Clinton doesn't even know how to use a simple email function, much less to determine who hacked her emails. No, I don't think that the plan tonight was part of any longer-term strategy on Trump's part, except that he's the chaos candidate and he's just going to sit there and ramble. But it seems to be working. Hillary Clinton largely is knocking herself out of viability anyway with her constant corruption, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah, somebody is definitely cloning Bobby Jones, I think. Oh, man. Yeah, Trump's biggest disadvantage in this debate, and I expect, unfortunately for him, I think it'll continue into the next two. His biggest problem was not scoring the hits he could have. Rather than being hit hard, he didn't really get hit that hard. He did well making the hits that he made, but he missed so many opportunities for even juicier hits where he could have completely annihilated Clinton. It's actually very funny to me that that's, of all the things that could have been the thing holding him back from a landslide debate performance, it's his unwillingness to pursue in more depth the hits that he's trying to follow through with, especially with the Mar-a-Lago, some of these issues. My goodness, it was terrible. But at the same time, he did get more hits in. He also spoke for a much larger proportion of the time allotted during the debate. He railed on his opponent. He encapsulated her candidacy in a single sentence, which is very meme-worthy, which is she has experience, but it's bad experience, line of the night. That, I think, gives him the win, even if it is a fairly small win. And now, without further ado, no, I'm not Spider-Man, I'm Batman, as you can see. Without further ado, I'm going to end the stream here, because otherwise, I won't be able to make videos tomorrow because my voice will be too tired. Also, it's midnight here. I really want some tea, too. As you can see behind me, right about there, is a jar of chamomile from the garden. And I'm going to drink it all, not in one go, you know, over the winter or something like that. Yeah, it's got a nice bell jar now. And that's a pile of sulfur there. You'll be able to see that when the lighting is better. But, yeah, it's time to end the stream. Oh, yeah. since I'm assuming you want like a new microphone or something, I will. This is a CAD U37 microphone. It's very good. It's like half the price of the Meteor or something like that. And it actually performs on par with them, like some of the ASMR videos with their sound quality. This is almost as good for less than half the price. I strongly recommend it, just like the Logitech C920 webcam I'm using. Very, very good. So you all take care, because the debate is over. Really pumps my nads thinking about all those personal attacks. I can't wait to see the analysis tomorrow from other people too, because I won't be the only person, analyzing it. But I can't say bye to you all. There's too many of you. Praise Keck. That's about all. Peace out.